I have a death clock app on my phone, and every morning that number gets smaller.
I don't want to make health and longevity and living well a black or white. That's not what every doctor would agree with.
You feel like you are benefiting from this deprivation, but actually it's a double negative. Should I be on GLP-1?
Getting hold of it somehow, and doctors are prescribing it outside guidelines.
Yes. So one thing that has surprised me the most is this silent stress. I am terrified that most of what I've been told to do for my health is wrong. I don't actually know if any of it is going to get me to 95.
There was a Harvard study that showed that loneliness is the #1 killer as we get older.
I don't want to become a burden to the people who love me.
All of these things we just talked about, they're not woo-woo stuff. They're real.
And all those options are free.
They're free.
Yeah.
No gym membership.
Both my parents died at 75. I am 48. I have a death clock app on my phone, and right now it tells me that I have 17,412 days left to live to 95. Every morning, that number gets smaller. But I don't want 27 years. I want 47 years, and I want to live well to 95. And I know exactly what those years need to look like. I want to be able to stand up out of a chair without help. I want to still have muscles. I still want to be sharp. I want to be the person that my friends can call when something breaks. What I don't want is to wither. What I saw happen with my parents. I don't want to lose my mind before I lose my body. And I don't want to become a burden to the people who love me. And so that's the fear I'm holding at 48. And I am terrified that most of what I've been told to do for my health is wrong. The many supplements in my cupboard, the workouts I show up for, the screenings I've been told to get, I don't actually know if any of it is going to get me to 95. So I went looking for someone who would tell me the truth about longevity. So I'm going to ask her, based on what she's seen, am I going to make it to 95? What am I doing right now that won't get me there? Welcome to Raw with Uma, where I have unfiltered conversations on all the things that we whisper, talk about behind closed doors. And if you enjoy this episode, please hit subscribe and please share this with somebody that you care about. So let's dive into today's episode. And I'm here with Dr. Foong. Thank you for joining me. Dr. Foong, you have what you call a primary care focused longevity practice. Tell us what that means.
Hi, Uma. I'm a primary care doctor, and primary care is actually a very well-established part of healthcare, as we know. It's a very broad-based practice where you cover a whole host of conditions. You see people from when they're a baby all the way to adults, and so our knowledge is very broad. I've used that knowledge to really build what we would call today, in very trendy terms, a longevity practice. Longevity has become very popular, as you probably know, hear and see in the last couple of years. We're all still trying to work out what that actually means. What's a longevity practice? And I'm quite clear with what that looks like because I use the foundations of primary care to actually look at that and focus on what longevity means for me and my patients. So to break that down, longevity to a lot of people is how old do I want to live to? Absolutely. And you said 95. That is lifespan. And you also very nicely described what you want to do, what that's going to look like. You know, I want to keep my vitality, my muscles, my brain. That's quality and that's health span. And the focus on longevity really should be, as how I see it, it's really health span as the focus. It's quality. And that's where I can come in with healthcare, primary care to really aim for that health span, that quality of life that we're aiming for.
Okay, so what are the constructs that you would look at it and say, well, this is a good life and health span? If somebody had a good life and health span, what are the elements of it?
So elements as in how do we achieve that?
Yes.
Yeah. So from my point of view, when I look at it, look at health, our approach is actually using lifestyle medicine. Lifestyle medicine is actually an established branch of medicine that's been around for decades, that's built on science and evidence. There are 6 pillars to lifestyle medicine: sleep, exercise, nutrition, mental health, mental wellness, social connections, and avoiding risky substances, so no smoking and limit alcohol or no alcohol. These 6 pillars do form the foundation to this approach, because data has really shown that can have up to 70% impact on your health outcomes.
Wow.
These 6 pillars can also have a 70% impact or influence perhaps on the on some chronic diseases, and the top 4 being heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and dementia. So 70% impact in perhaps developing these 4 conditions, and the last 30% probably influenced by our genes and our genetics. And that's why our approach here is really focused on lifestyle medicine, because of the impact it has.
And can somebody get a score on all 6?
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting. I don't know. We never looked at it from a score, but I guess if I were to, and I guess that's how do we measure what these 6 pillars look like? And I often approach this when I talk to my patients by saying, we need data. Right. So we need data on what your health is looking like. And I always start off with a foundational panel of blood tests. And these are often the ones that you find here in Singapore in your executive health screenings.
Yeah.
Your cholesterol reading, your liver function, your kidney function, your blood sugars, thyroid function, urine test. And I would actually add in my foundational stack, making sure your vitamin D levels are checked, B12, folic acid, iron levels. That's my absolute foundation. Layering that on, you can add, other tests that would give you perhaps delineate, your risk factors around cardiac, heart disease, cholesterol, and we can keep stacking. And as we keep stacking, that's where we start getting into the realms of longevity and longevity testing, where we can look at biological age, we can look at the impact of how much alcohol you drink, and what its impact on you, how you exercise and its impact on you. So that's called epigenetics test. So that's looking at your health, perhaps on a cellular level, looking at biological age, but also impact. So that sort of extreme and top of the, more towards the top of the stack.
Yes.
But the approach to how we're going to achieve that has to start from foundational testing, getting data, interpreting the data correctly, and knowing how to systematically and meaningfully stack this information that we're going to get.
Okay. So if I have all those baseline data, and I'm 48 now, going through perimenopause, and if I have this desire to live well to 95, would you recommend that I do the epigenetics test?
That's probably not where I would start. I would start with the foundational tests, get as much data, understand how you live your life based on those 6 pillars.
Okay.
Do you move? Do you exercise? What's your sleep like? What do you do? What's your job? How do you manage your stress every day? How well do you eat? And we work on those. We optimize those as well as we can.
Okay.
Before going for further, tests. Because remember, lifestyle forms, can impact up to 70% of the outcome.
Okay, so let's go through one by one. Let's start with sleep, which is the most important thing. And you and I have been working on my sleep. And my issue is that I'm not getting enough deep sleep, and it's not happening early enough in my sleep cycle. which means I'm tired and I don't have a good wind down routine. Now, there's a lot of supplements out there to help with sleep. And you talk a lot about just mindful moments, right? To try and take that level of stress wherever you're operating that day to try and reduce the cliff into your restored state. And I struggle a lot with restfulness as well. Like every morning I look at Aura, it's like it doesn't give me a good score on restfulness.
The quality of sleep is important. Deep sleep is actually what allows our brain to well, let's say recover from a busy day. It helps actually our body and our muscles down to the cellular level to really repair. So if we're looking at living longer, living better, and looking at longevity, we really need to have enough amounts of deep sleep at the right time in the cycle. So deep sleep needs to happen usually in the first half of the cycle, and light and REM sleep in the second half. But light and REM sleep is just as important because REM sleep is how we have that creative side of how our brain, sort of thinks, and you live and you function, you thrive. And so getting sort of that good quality sleep is key, which is why sleep is the number one foundation. It affects how we live our day, how much energy we've got. Because sleep has so much, sort of further ramifications beyond just what it's doing to us.
So how much sleep should I get? Like, what's good?
On average, an adult needs about 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Some need 7, others need 9. Anecdotally, I see, people who use their brains a lot and, think a lot and can multitask a lot tend to need more. I think that just makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds like me.
We see that in women. We're great at multitasking and juggling, and we tend to sort of
and we hold a lot of mental tasks as caregivers. And I think people often confuse sleep time with time in bed, right? And that's why if you're wearing a wearable, it can actually tell you the difference, because just because you spent 9 hours in bed, it didn't mean that you slept for 9 hours, right? So what you're talking about is sleep time, not time in bed.
Absolutely. And also our modern life, that's causing that. We're often, especially with screens and phones now, we're scrolling or we get into bed and we're looking at our phones, we're watching TV. And that's what we call sleep hygiene. The hygiene around how we wind down, what we do with that time, how we sort of, view sleeping.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, it's very important.
What's your view on naps?
Naps, I would say, my personal view, listen to your body. If your body's telling you I need a nap, you probably need a nap. And it may be because you've not clocked enough hours during the night. It may be because your sleep quality is poor, but your sleep quality could be poor not because you're not doing all the sleep hygiene and doing all the right things. But what I would look at when I'm seeing someone in clinic is checking that all these other conditions. How do they sleep? Do they mouth breathe when they sleep? Do they snore when they sleep? Do they have allergies? Because that's usually one of the most common causes of mouth breathing or snoring. Have we put on weight? We talked about that weight in our 40s. That can actually impact the way we're breathing when we sleep.
Yeah.
So that's also affecting our sleep quality. So we talked a lot about sort of mental stress winding down, but there are these other factors that we need to look at as well around sleep.
I had to take a 2-hour nap the other day, and I'm in the close to starting my cycle, and I tend to feel more tired, and it just comes out of nowhere. And I think the Aura Ring kind of penalized me for my readiness.
Listen to your body. If you need the nap, do that. And how interesting you talked about that being around your cycle.
Yeah.
Because there are actually a lot of changes around our cycle. And we shouldn't see that just because we can do that today and this week, that we can do the same next week. Because there's a lot to be said about working with our cycles.
Oh, yes. Yes. And so that final week, before day 1, and day 1 is when you bleed, is when you're supposed to be winding down and not putting stress on your body, which is going to introduce cortisol. And for that period, you're not meant to, I think it will store as fat if you do it in that period.
That's right. Higher cortisol, in simple terms, actually increases the amount of visceral fat. It's often around the middle here, right? Which is what we're always seeing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's sleep. Number 2, exercise. What's a good amount of exercise? How would somebody know, okay, I'm doing enough to check, the exercise box?
So actually, exercise can be divided into 4 different kinds of exercise. So strength training, cardio, stretch, and balance. At this stage, we don't need to look at balance as much because, you should have good balance. Some women think, or, some people think, often exercise is just, we must get our heart racing and that's cardio, that's exercise. But it's actually doing a combination of all of them. Particularly for us women in our 40s, strength training is key. That's to keep our muscles, because our muscles mass starts to deteriorate, but also keeping our muscles helps to keep up the metabolism, because we see metabolism shift for other reasons, but losing muscle mass is one of the reasons as well. Often you hear people sort of, what should I do? And we go, oh, strength train 2 to 3 times a week, do some cardio maybe twice a week. That advice, that is correct. Okay, that's not wrong. But I think what we want to do is to perhaps on an individual level, go a little bit deeper and work out what you really need. And that is when we can start to be more personalized by getting more data.
Okay.
So for example, measuring your VO2 max, which is your the oxygen, the maximum capacity your lungs can take in, that translates to your endurance, say. And we can use that as a marker and see whether we should be working towards a better number and an optimal number, which means we can then tweak the cardio side of your exercise to increase your VO2 max. So that's what I mean by we can be more precise.
Yeah. How does somebody measure their VO2 max? Because this is something that's getting more and more popular, and it's also advertised as the number 1 indicator on longevity.
True gold standard VO2 max needs to be done properly, okay, in a clinic with an exercise physiologist that's able to make sure the test is run well and interpret that data. You're usually on a bike or a treadmill, and you wear a mask that actually takes those measurements. That's the gold standard. Apple Watch actually claims that they measure VO2 max as well. I'm not going to say that that's not the way to do it, but just comparing it with what you're doing in a clinic, I think we can all conclude that perhaps it may not be as accurate. I don't go as far as saying don't do that, but I think that gives us an idea. Yeah. I think that gives us a trend. But if we're looking for absolute, sort of accurate reading, then we've got to go for the gold standard. And that actually goes back to the earlier conversation. We talked about stacking tests, right? VO2 max comes later on. Yeah. It's not in our foundational stack. Yeah. If we want to be more precise, we want to give someone actual information. What should I really do? Then at some point, we may want to think about having VO2 max in our test kit. Yeah. To be precise. But as a general rule, strength train a couple of times a week. Cardio, get your heart racing, jogging, running, swimming, bikes, stretch. Yeah. Okay, you can do that at home. You don't necessarily always need to go to your Pilates or yoga. And with that comes balance. So a combination of that is the kind of exercise we should do. And today we can actually measure the impact of exercise, as I briefly talked about earlier. We can actually run a blood test to actually measure the epigenetic impact on exercise. What epigenetic impact means is we're all genetically different. Yeah. You and I can do exactly the same regime of exercise, but the impact of that regime could be quite different for you and me. Yes. And this test can actually tell us how efficient that is and whether that regime suits us. Once again, that test is further down the stack. of how we're going to work out what's good for us. And look, exercise has a lot of mental health benefits. So I would start with, go with what makes you feel happy. Go with what feels right. Start there.
Yeah, just move.
Just move, exactly.
Yeah. Great. Now let's talk about nutrition. When you say nutrition, what do you mean?
Well, I start off by saying just make good choices and eat well. I actually have, you hear this 80-20 rule. So that's what we often say. 80% of the time, just choose and eat well. And 20% of the time, have some fun. I'm a believer. Life is for living. Yeah. So 80-20.
Yeah.
But when I get someone's, say, data, their cholesterol report back in front of me, and now I have actual data, I'll go, right, okay, maybe it's a 90-10. Maybe it's about 70-30. And that's where you can, sort of balance that out a little bit more. But generally, choose well, eat well. I think people generally now know what is eating well. Eating whole foods.
Yeah.
Absolutely cutting out ultra-processed food.
Yes.
Okay. Nutrient-dense food. So eating well is one we know. There's also
so fresh foods, nothing out of cans, nothing processed, nothing high sugar, right?
Nothing out of cans that's processed. I wouldn't say all canned foods a no-go. We talk about carbohydrates and maybe protein, but carbohydrates really sometimes gets bad press.
Yeah.
So what should we eat? Eat well, no ultra-processed, eat fresh. And actually then we go one step further, once you can establish that, to look at how much we have in terms of protein and carbohydrates. Because I'm sure a lot of women would know and hear this sort of mantra about have your protein. I think we hear that a lot now, right?
Yes.
So protein and carbohydrates.
Yeah.
So that is to prioritize and actually think about protein. Going back to the point of, muscle mass.
Yeah.
Keeping and building muscle is key. So that's where protein really comes in.
Yeah.
And also thinking about carbs. And I especially want to mention that because this is something I see quite a lot. We almost say carbs are bad. Carbs make us put on weight. It's true, we shouldn't have as much carbs perhaps compared to when we were a child or in our teens. But actually when we are training, knowing when and how much carbs and timing carbs is actually important.
Yes. Especially before and after you work out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's good carbs, right? Like I do like sweet potato, tricolored quinoa.
Yeah.
Even potatoes. What else are good carbs?
So things aren't just good or bad.
Yes.
It's having a balance, making good choices, and actually having a variety of choices as well. And actually on that note, there's good data to show that we should eat that variety. In fact, what is good? What should we do? Aiming for 30 different kinds of fruits and vegetables per week is something we can actually have a target to aim for because that's actually shown to really be great for our gut diversity, gut microbiome. So something like that if we can have specific number and, specific target, that's something that's good to aim for.
Okay, so nutrition, start with the basics, protein, carbs, vegetables, right? Fiber, and do a variety of them, especially the vegetables and fruits. And so that's the basics of nutrition. If I wanted to go a little bit further, let's say, okay, I've got that sorted. I'm kind of eat like that right now. What else would I be doing?
I would then look more closely at the amount you're having, tying that with how you move, how you train, how you exercise. Perhaps taking that one step further and understanding a little bit more about what nutrition, what certain kinds of foods do to you. Some people are interested in and consider having something called a CGM, a continuous glucose monitoring. Have you worn one before, Uma?
I have.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun because for 2 weeks you should eat everything.
Yes.
And see what happens to your glucose levels.
That's it. So for the first 2 weeks, eat everything, record what it does, know what it does, see how it makes you feel, see what it does to your sugars. Then I feel you should wear it again. And then now sort of layer that with how you move, how you sleep, how you exercise, how much stress you're feeling that day, because all of those factors have an impact on your blood sugars.
Yeah.
Right. And then take it one step further and go nutrition, right? So now what do I need to eat to ensure that when I exercise, I still keep my blood sugar steady.
Yeah.
So there's actually a lot of information you can get from that.
Yeah.
So that's the next level of going deep diving into nutrition.
So we've talked about sleep, exercise, and nutrition. So the fourth part is mental health. How do we measure mental health? What do you look for? What are the basics?
Mental health is a very broad one.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think relating it back to women in their 40s, perimenopause and menopause, I think I'll start off by saying actually we do see changes in our mental health because of hormonal changes at this time. And so we actually experience a lot more anxiety and palpitations for some women. And when we're relating this to longevity, which is what we're talking about here, is we know that we often find that we lose our cognitive ability and perhaps the risk of dementia goes up when we're older. So looking at mental health, we need to really, at this point, manage stress very well. And that is having enough sort of restful states during the day.
Yeah.
To not, I guess, overstretch our brain because that then reduces our cognitive ability.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what we need to do is to manage stress well now. But when we're looking at longevity and what we need to do to keep our brain functioning well, okay, at this point in our 40s, it actually comes down to lifestyle factors. So if we're looking at longevity and what do I need to do to prevent dementia in my 60s, 70s, and 80s, comes back to lifestyle of exercise, nutrition to actually keep our cognitive ability. But when we're looking at mental health, perhaps we're talking about more stress management, anxiety, depression. Then that is really making sure we have enough sort of what I call, restful periods, escape valve.
Yes.
Escape stress relief valves every day.
Yeah. I feel like I'm a relatively healthy person. And the one thing that has surprised me the most is this silent stress. And I didn't figure it out until the Aura Ring introduced the daytime stress tracking, because sometimes you could just be sitting and doing nothing or just working and you don't feel stress. However, the ring is telling you otherwise, that you are stressed. And I think that's why I call it like the silent killer, and it's sitting inside your body, right? And it's accumulating over many days.
Let me break down what the Aura Ring is actually picking up on from that stress data. What it's picking up is actually translating to the stress data on Aura is your heart rate variability, HRV. And we see that talked about a lot when we talk about longevity.
Yes.
HRV is that millisecond in between each heart rate. So how your heart recovers in between each beat. And what that really reflects is your nervous system. That's why Aura's used HRV data to talk about stress data, which I think is a very neat way of looking at something. So what it's really telling us is the state of our nervous system. So you may be quietly thinking about something, but actually you are thinking through. So your nervous system is probably higher, raised. You may be enjoying that thinking process, but to do that, you may be, working through that, which shows that your nervous system is higher than it should be.
Yeah.
Or we would like it to be. And that actually is what, we're seeing a lot in modern lives. Modern lives is keeping us going at that level, that baseline level all the time. It's exciting, our brains love it, but we also have so much to do. So we're constantly on the go, which means our nervous system is running at a higher level vibration, if you'd like. And that is what's coming through in our HRV, because that's reflecting our nervous system, which is coming through as the stress data that we see.
Yes, and the harder thing to do is to do nothing.
Yes.
And I was looking at my HRV data, And it's interesting because it's just been over 2 years now since I left the corporate world. Aura just said, you've had more restorative time today than usual because I'm sitting here and talking to you for 2 hours. I'm just wondering, did it really take me like over 2 years for my nervous system to catch up, that I'm no longer in a different environment?
When we look at nervous system, we often look at stress, mental load, etc. And that's a very key part of our nervous system. But actually, we need to look at our health as well. So things around, perimenopause, fluctuating hormones, treatments you've been on to help, stabilize that, things we corrected in your health, the parameters we corrected in your health, they all help to provide that calm and that balance that your health needs. And they all contribute to also certainly mentally, calming that nervous system down. But yes, it has taken that period of time to really, feel safe again.
Oh gosh, that's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy, like what's happening inside our bodies that we can't even see, which is why I love all these wearables, because otherwise you're going with your feeling, which is also okay. But I've just found now in my late 40s that it's just so useful to have the data.
Data is very, very useful. Data sometimes can overwhelm people. If they're not using the data correctly and using that in silos, sometimes that's also not as helpful.
Yeah.
Because you're not actually, getting the whole story. But overall, data is good. And I think we should all embrace that. And hopefully, where things are going in this world with AI, we should be able to embrace data a lot more.
Yeah.
But not everyone likes data. And I just want to be...
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think if it's pushing you towards the wrong direction, just stop. I know a few friends who wake up and look at their Aura score and it stresses them out. So
I often say, take the data to me and I'll help you read it.
Yeah, exactly. Find somebody who can decipher it for you. Let's talk about social connections. I think this was a big part of the Blue Zones study. And Singapore is a blue zone where we have centurions living, people over 100. And social connections was one of the most important parts of this. So is this merely about having friends that you connect with in person and talk to, the 5 people you surround yourself with, that you have proximity to them? How do you measure social connections?
I'm not sure how you can measure it, but it's certainly one of the, as you can see, a key health pillar. In fact, there was a Harvard study that showed that loneliness is the number one, should we say, killer, as we get older. And that's actually proven in a Harvard study. I think we need to make sure social connections are good quality connections as well.
Yes.
Right.
Not
positive.
social for the sake of social.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, if it's sociable, you go out and you're having fun and it's, a fun environment. I mean, that feeds into sort of your happy hormones as well. So yes, but what this is really looking at is meaningful social connections. That is positive, not negative, not toxic.
Yes.
But having another human being to connect with, whether it's in person, it's definitely preferable.
Yes.
Than virtual. I mean, think back COVID times, we were all Zooming in online, but nothing beats sitting in front of somebody and connecting with them. So social connections with friends, family, a network. Even at this point, if someone's at work, their colleagues is, could be a key part of their social connections as well.
Yeah. Yes. And I think when you're in person, it's just a different exchange of energy. There's the human touch, right? I think all of that forms connection. Now, as a self-professed introvert, highly introverted person, which people don't believe, but yes, I am. So after this podcast, I'm going to go home and be by myself to recover, right? I think you have to find social connections that work for you. And maybe for me, for example, most of the time, it's a one-to-one connection. And for the times that I need to be in a large group, I don't necessarily find that a meaningful connection, as you say.
Absolutely. I think it's certainly meaningful over, quality over quantity.
Yeah. And the last one is avoid substances. Let's talk about this one.
Harmful substances. So smoking, I think, is certainly no smoking.
Okay.
So that's, I think most people know that now. Alcohol, I think that's the one that's a little bit more difficult, perhaps, to talk about.
With.
Yes. So studies, data shows, and I think if you look at guidelines, what people are really saying is zero alcohol. And we hear that. I use lifestyle medicine to sort of frame this conversation because it's based on evidence. And in fact, the American Lifestyle Society says zero alcohol. If you look at data on longevity, generally zero alcohol. My take is, zero alcohol or limit your alcohol. Okay. So a couple of things here. We can actually measure the impact of alcohol on you.
Okay.
So that's where I probably would start if someone wants to still consider alcohol.
Yeah.
And that's in the stack of epigenetics tests I was talking about. You can actually measure the impact of alcohol on you today.
Okay.
However, look at your data. What does your data show you? I talk about wearable data. What does your data show you when you have alcohol? We know it impacts your sleep.
Yes.
Right? Let's not say it doesn't. We know it does.
Yeah.
But how much does it impact? To what extent? And so then you can make a decision at that point.
Yes.
Am I going to cut out completely? Am I just going to have that once a month? Maybe just twice a month, maybe for special occasions.
Yeah.
Because alcohol, for me at this point, at least, is quite tied in with social connections. Right. Of course, I can turn up to, see a friend and not drink.
Yes.
But I enjoy a drink.
Yeah.
And it actually makes me feel happy.
Yeah.
So at this point, that's my personal take. But clinically, the evidence is quite clear about the impact of alcohol, not just on sleep, but it can cause diseases, cancers, etc.
Yeah.
I'm not going to quite say no to that person.
Yeah.
I don't want to make health and longevity and living well a black or white and depriving someone at this point of something they still want to consider. And I want to work with them to sort of break that down a little bit more.
Yeah.
And if we can use some data to make that decision, let's do that.
Yeah. This is the one I struggle with the most, alcohol. I'm a wine collector. There is a lot of wines for me to drink till 95. And so I think just noticing the effects on you, like you say. So for example, I think it works best for me to drink as early as possible if I want to drink. And the question I like to ask myself now on whether or not I have a drink is at that point in time, in the environment that I am in, who I'm with, just in that point in time, is this going to feel nourishing to me? And if I feel like, oh, yeah, I would like a glass of bubbles or a red or anything, then I am going to have it. I think there's a lot to be said about not depriving yourself, because it's almost like you feel like you are benefiting from this deprivation, but actually it's a double negative.
Correct.
Right?
I'm with you.
Yeah. So I'm hoping I will be able to drink for a while, although all the stuff about menopause says you should stop alcohol.
It's just because it adds to the stress that your body's already under. During menopause, your hormones are just moving in a slightly chaotic manner. And we know that when you sort of add alcohol to that, it can disrupt the metabolism that little bit more. That is why. But the thing about drinking is sort of work out what works for you.
Yeah.
Some people have to stick with one kind of alcohol.
Yes.
Pace yourself.
Yeah.
Spread it out. Make sure you have a glass of water in between each drink. Maybe limit yourself, right?
Yeah.
And say, I'd like that drink, but I'm going to have just one glass tonight, or maybe two.
Yes.
And find the alcohol that's worth drinking.
Oh, I'm so with you on that last one. Find the alcohol worth drinking because I think it helps with, when should we enjoy this bottle together versus let's just open a bottle, right?
Yeah.
And then you're going to be intentional about who you're with, when you do it, and then you're going to savor it instead of chugging it down, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm all for,
So it's about finding the balance and what works for you at this point. And that actually is the point about what can we do at this point to live better?
Yeah.
It's not fitting in the box of this is what we must do.
Yeah.
And work perhaps towards that or not. But that is, I feel, much more meaningful.
Yeah.
For everyone.
Yes. I want to talk about GLP-1. There's so much out there. I know friends who are on it, that are using it as a weight loss supplement, which is great. I don't feel the need to lose any weight, but there's also linkages now to how it helps you live better longer. What are your thoughts about that? And should I be on GLP-1?
Okay. I'm going to start off by saying what is the clinical consensus, and then I'm going to share with you my personal thoughts. So GLP-1s they, as we know, first developed as a diabetic drug, and since then it's been FDA approved as a weight loss drug. There are strict clinical guidelines as to when it should be used in the weight loss arena. Okay, your BMI needs to be above 30 or above 27. If you have other cardiometabolic conditions, for example, anything to do with your heart or diabetes, that's the criteria. My take is and seeing it over the last couple of years, it's become a very well-known weight loss drug. And one of the things about having more people using it, not just the diabetics, not just the people who are above a certain BMI, is more people are using that. They're getting hold of it somehow, and doctors are prescribing it outside guidelines.
Yes.
The positive is we have a lot more data to go on. We actually know what it does, perhaps what side effects it's doing, and we're actually collecting a lot more data. We know that it's used for weight loss, but with all that other data coming through, we also now know it has benefits to, when we say longevity, is to reduce our cardiometabolic risk. It's after all used as a diabetic drug in the first instance. It was to control their blood sugars, right? So if we're looking at longevity, and I go back to saying, what are the top few conditions? We're looking at heart, diabetes, right? And women in their 40s and 50s when they're going through perimenopause and menopause, we know that this is a period of time where we also have more impact and stress on our cardiometabolic pathways and insulin resistance.
Yeah.
So we're going to have more problems clinically with these conditions. So GLP-1s possibly has its place for certain people at certain times of their lives. So what I'm saying is, I would think broader than outside the strict clinical guidelines and work on an individual basis to see whether GLP-1s work for them.
Yeah.
And I'm also all for perhaps offering GLP-1 when someone feels it is really going to help their health journey by giving them the confidence when they start to actually see some weight loss as they start to put in the other lifestyle factors like exercising more and eating better.
Yes.
Rather than saying, work on those factors and I would only give you GLP-1s when you're stuck. So that's perhaps, not what every doctor would agree with.
Yeah.
But I'm for working with that individual and also seeing at, the point where it's really going to move the needle in their confidence because they are seeing the weight loss.
Yeah.
But working safely so that you can monitor its effect and also having the conversation about when you're going to perhaps tail it off, etc.
Yeah. And for someone like me who's got good eating habits, I exercise, we're going to do my medical next month. And what would you see in the results where you would then say to me, do you want to talk about GLP-1?
The biggest one for me will be insulin resistance. I would be looking at the blood sugars, HbA1c, fasting insulin.
Yep.
And see if that is trending in the right direction, since we've put in, things like HRT
Yes.
in your regime. And if that's not coming down, and I know you train hard and you eat well, that's perhaps when the GLP-1 conversations will come in.
What about liver fat?
Fatty liver is something we don't always see immediately on a blood test. If we do, and that's impacted your liver enzymes already, we'll see that.
Okay.
But we need a specialized, an ultrasound scan or a specialized ultrasound scan called FibroScan. Fatty liver is linked with cardiometabolic insulin resistance as well. So I wouldn't use fatty liver. If I have the data, yes, but it wouldn't be the only reason why I would start someone on GLP-1s.
So you're my doctor and you've seen my data. And based on everything that you know, do you think I'm going to make it till 95? Am I going to live well if I do? And if there's any one thing I should be concerned about, what would it be?
I know you're working very hard at all of this, but if there's one thing I would be listing or picking out, that would be stress management.
And I know your number one tip for that is to take more mindful moments during the day. So pause for 1 or 2 minutes and take deep breaths. Anything else that you might recommend?
Build that into a habit.
Yeah.
For example, meditation, 5 or 10 minutes first thing in the morning. Journaling in the evening, build that in. Make that habit, make that something you do every day. All of these things we've just talked about, they're not woo-woo stuff. Yeah. They're real. All of this is really built in evidence in science. There's a lot of studies, a lot of data, a lot of papers to really prove that mindfulness breathing, meditation, all these are actually going to make a difference in your nervous system. And that means in your health outcomes. And
all those options are free.
They're free. Yeah. No gym membership.
Yeah.
No supplements to take.
Yeah. Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for this conversation, Dr. Foong. I learned so much, and I'm sure everybody who's watching have taken a lot of notes from this. I have so much to work on. But yeah, I hope that was a useful conversation for you. Please hit subscribe and please share this with a friend. And thank you for joining this conversation. And you're going to see the next episode coming up. So watch that because I think it's going to be super useful for you. Thank you.